What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thank you for listening. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter, NJH287. Hit me up on LinkedIn as well, where I post more content. Visit the website, dsmsports.net, for an archive of episodes and other content. And, of course, check out the podcast on whichever platform you prefer for your podcast listening. What a great show for you guys today. I am going to be joined by the manager of social engagement for The Athletic, Olivia Witherite. Obviously, The Athletic is a brand that if you are in sports, you are well aware of The Athletic, the subscription platform that has a ton of great articles and podcasts and other content. And Olivia does a fantastic job helping to lead the social media strategy there. So stick around for a conversation with Olivia. But first, this episode's helpful tool. This episode's helpful tool is a great video tool that if you're listening to this podcast, you've probably heard of it. You probably have used it even. And it's a tool, an app called CapCut. It is made by ByteDance, yes, the same company behind TikTok and Douyin. And it is exactly what you would hope it would be. It has pretty much everything you'd want for a TikTok video creator and then some. Some people don't like creating within the TikTok app. It's a little bit harder to, manage your drafts and all that. And this TikTok sibling, I guess you could say, or child app called CapCut is full of great tools that is really useful for any video creation that you need to be doing, whether it's for TikTok or any other platform. It's very powerful. You can use different clips just like you can in TikTok. You can add voiceovers. You can add overlays. You can add text. You can add stickers. You can extract audio and then save those audio sounds just like you would on TikTok. You can use filters. You can use effects. There's really no limit. You can also use some of the stock video and stock sounds that they have as well if you're looking for some inspiration or some ideas. And really just a pretty interesting platform. There's even some sort of magic features as well that can help you create videos on the fly if you're not that great at combining videos and combining media. So give it a go. You can also resize it for other platforms. You can shrink or enlarge the canvas. You can zoom in and zoom out. Really just a ton of features to check out. More than I can list right now, but if you're creating videos at all regularly, whether it's for TikTok or any other platform, check out the CapCut app because it's very useful. So that's this helpful tool, but stick around because we have a great chat coming up with Olivia Witherite of The Athletic. Back from this episode's opening segment, and I am so psyched for today's guests. Offline, I was just praising the great work that she does. We're joined on the podcast today by Olivia Witherite. She is the manager of social engagement for The Athletic. Welcome to the podcast today, Olivia.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Really psyched to pick your brain. The Athletic is just a monster of a property. It does a lot of great work, and you've done a lot of great work throughout your career. So tell us about yourself. Give us an idea of your background, how you got started in this crazy sports game, how you got to The Athletic, and any tips for folks that want to do what you do.
Sure. So I started my career knowing that I wanted to work in sports, but I wasn't exactly sure what that would look like. So I thought originally that I wanted to be a beat writer because I was kind of coming up during a time where that was all I really saw visibly in the sports media space. So I started kind of going down that path and then grew up in the time where social media was really exploding. And then I kind of pivoted to that. So I was really fortunate to get an internship with MASN, which is the broadcast home of the Orioles and Nationals, when I was in college, and then kind of ran with it from there. I kept working with them after school. I made it up to be the senior director there. And then in October of 2019, I left to join The Athletic.
That is a lot of glossing over some of the really how you got to there, of course, and you earned your way throughout. So what kind of skills do you have to showcase? How do you kind of keep up with industry? And also it sounds like you certainly came up more in the content production game or journalism game, for lack of a better term, that's sort of storytelling aspect. So what kind of did you have to do to grow in these positions and ultimately get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I think I'm really fortunate because when I was at MASN, it was kind of a small operation, my department. So I really got to do a little bit of everything. So there I was learning social media, PR, events, working with players, things like that. So I really got to get my hands dirty in a lot of different things. And I think that sort of made me who I am today, and that I was sort of thrown into the deep end of the pool. And then it was kind of just like, all right, figure it out. I had some really good people around me too to help guide me. But that was a big part of why I think I was able to get this job where I'm at the Athletic now, is just sort of being able to grind and do a lot of different things. And then again, like social media is something that's been very near and dear to my heart since the beginning. So now at the Athletic, I'm a little bit more focused on social and content strategy. So a little bit more narrow focus than I was at my old job, but definitely still a lot of fun.
I definitely want to delve into the time at Mass and kind of your upbringing, but let's set the stage a little bit for the Athletic now. And as much as you can, give me an idea of what does that just massive beast look like? I know you talk me through. I think you have accounts for that are regionally based, that are sports based. And then you have all the writers. So like, what does this just massive behemoth look like?
Yeah, it's a good problem to have, right? There are so many amazing writers, and so there's so much good content, so many good podcasts, things like that. So it is definitely a challenge. And I think for me, I was so in tune with Baltimore and DC fans before I left this job. And now I'm speaking to such a broader audience. So diehard sports fans across not just the country, but the world, you know? So
Yeah.
it's been really fun to expand my horizons and get into different sports and things. It's been so fun doing like the NBA playoffs and things like that, the drafts. It's really fun when you get to work alongside some of the top insiders in the game, like Ken Rosenthal on the baseball side and Shams Charania on the NBA side. It's just really fun to work an NBA draft or something like that when he's on your team. So it's been a lot different and again, a lot to manage, but it's a good problem to have that much information at your fingertips and just that much good content that you can sort through. So I think for me, it's kind of trying to figure out like what's the most interesting and what people are talking about the most on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, it's a lot, and we really rely on our writers too to kind of push out a lot of their own stuff because there's just again so much stuff, and it's so much really really good stuff too. So it's been fun.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about because I think of even my own experience on a weekend when sports are going crazy or on a night when sports are going crazy. And I think of some people right now are glued to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Other people are glued to the NBA. Some people are watching their favorite Major League Baseball team. And there's so much going on in the greater sports ecosystem. And all those folks, all those fans comprise the Athletic subscribers as well. And so I can imagine it's both, as you said, a fun challenge to have for sure. I want to bounce back a little bit to Masson as well, especially making that transition to the Athletic, where you have basically the entire globe of sports fans. Whereas at Masson, it was certainly, I guess you can enlighten me. You were talking to DC fans, Baltimore fans, Baltimore Orioles fans, maybe Washington Wizards fans. So what's that mindset like when you were at Masson and whether it's we want to be the objective home for everything's Orioles or we want to be homers. We want you to feel like we're a great or more informed, talented fan or whatnot. So what was that fan framework like for the Orioles and how has it been transitioning to the Athletic where it really is we don't have a team in the race?
Yeah, so for the Orioles and the Nationals, I think it was really fun for me because it was a lot of storytelling about the actual athletes, and that's something that I really, really enjoy. And then when setting like brand tone and voice and things for me, I would always tell the people working for me that the way that we should be looking at things is like a behind the scenes educated fan. So we were excited when the team won. We wanted them to do well, but doing so in an educated way. So that involves being rational, you know, not ever bashing players like some fans will do, or getting too high or too low on certain moments, but really being that educated fan because we had a lot of access and information that people wanted to see and wanted to engage with. So that was a big part of what we did. But yeah, I would say we were biased to an extent in that we definitely wanted to see the teams win. It's more fun when they do, and we know that obviously winning really resonated with fans, so it was something that we would play up on. And then I think for both of those teams, the Orioles and the Nationals, it was just really fun to be a part of the community. Like I felt very in tune with how Nats fans felt about X player or the manager or things around the ballpark, where to go, before a game or things like that. And then same with Orioles fans. I felt like a really strong connection, and I still really feel it with them. I grew up an Orioles fan, but I think I kind of put it to the side to be, a professional when I was working there.
Yeah.
But now that I am out of that, I have been a lot more vocal about being an Orioles fan in my personal life. And it's been really cool to see the community of people that I've met through Masson. And I feel like I still have a pretty strong connection with a lot of those people. And that's only possible because of, my job and the way that I was able to form relationships there.
Yeah, that's so powerful. It's always great when your existing passion aligns with your job, because you can talk about the early days of Cal Ripken Jr. You can talk, the Orioles history a little bit, and that helps to inform the content and the engagement that you have with fans when you're in that role at Masson. And for Masson, I mean, like right now with the Athletic, there are you are driving toward conversions or goals in some ways, at least, like the organization has those goals, whereas at Masson it was maybe a little bit harder to really gauge whether it's site traffic or tune in to live games, or whatever else it may be. Like how did you kind of gauge success and build strategy at Masson, and what were you ultimately working towards? It was just these more greater metrics around, we want people to engage with our content on any platform they want. Take me through kind of that strategic framework at Masson.
Yeah, so at Masson, it was really about on-platform engagements, and I would say it's the same for the Athletic too. We want to know that our content is resonating with people on platform and meeting people where they are. So whether that was Twitter or Instagram or whatever it might be, Snapchat for a time, I just wanted to make sure that what we were doing was really resonating with fans. And then Masson had a lot of other touch points that I was involved with too, from fan events to a lot of sponsored types of giveaways and events to fan fest. So there are a lot of ways to kind of measure audience sentiment too, beyond social engagement. But for me and for my team, it was always about on-platform engagement. And then more secondary was ratings and things like that, which we could see when we were having an impact on TV ratings and things like that. But definitely a little bit more secondary as far as the social goals went.
Gotcha. So yeah, it's not like we're going to show you this highlight or tease this game going on. We ultimately want you to enjoy what you're doing on the platform and engage with the brand. The more you engage with us, the better off we are at the end of the day, and getting you to engage off platform as well to those linear channels and wherever else it may be. So with the Athletic, I guess you have so many different ways that you can engage fans, whether it's around a story that's resonating in the greater sports ecosystem or a story that you guys have produced as well. So like when you're looking at approaching a season or a quarter or a year or a month, is it more like we know we're going to have some great stories from Ken Rosenthal, from Jason Stark, from all these great writers that we have, and let's turn these stories into great social assets as well, as much as we need to be ready to react to whatever's happening in the sports zeitgeist, which is a little bit harder to predict?
I think it's a combination. So we are all sports fans in the social department, so we kind of are excited for big moments and big games, like the Stanley Cup playoffs and the NBA playoffs are both going on right now. So it's something that we have a close eye on. But then, like you said, we have a really amazing arsenal of writers at our disposal. So that's really fun too, to know that we have certain stories coming or certain things that are features coming that we can promote too. So it's definitely a combination of both of those things.
And how do you guys keep track of it all? I mean, there really is, like, I remember maybe it was Seth Davis tweeting a number a while back or something around just how many original stories come out every day on the platform. And I don't know how you guys keep track of it all and then activate some of them on social to a higher degree. Like what's a little bit of that infrastructure look like to make sure that you guys don't miss anything awesome?
Yeah, we have really great teams, from our social team to our programming teams and to just amazing editors. I would say that I knew a little bit about editing before I came to The Athletic, not as much as I know now, and just the incredible editors that we have at The Athletic. They're definitely sort of unsung heroes sometimes, probably not in the company. I think in the company, everyone knows how valuable they can be, but the It's not like they have bylines all the times that people would see, but they're amazing too. So it's really a group effort of how things are surfaced and how we see some of the best stuff. And then again, because we're the social team, we can kind of see what's resonating on social too and what people are talking about.
Totally makes sense. And as you said, you are lucky to have a great infrastructure in place, because it's not just a couple people behind the social media platforms that are doing a lot of the work in the background as well. So I guess more generally speaking, as you look at just the ever-changing nature of social and how fans do engage on the platforms, how do you guys make sure that you are going about learning the best way to present content, or doing operating on with some of the new features, like whether it's Reels or TikTok, or doing live content or Twitter Spaces? It seems like every week we have something a new toy to play around with. So what's the approach, and then kind of how do you look at different ways that fans can engage, whether it's commenting, watching, sharing, and how those work into the strategy as well? So just a few things, a very loaded question, I understand, but I'll let you sound off a little bit, Olivia.
Yeah. So for me, and I think this goes for anything, not specifically my job or my past job, is that when people are creating a social strategy or trying to figure out what works, it's really important that you set these goals and objectives up front. So this is what I want to be to our audience. This is what I want to sound like. This is what we need to accomplish. And then once you have that, you'll have different tools as far as, like you said, Twitter Spaces might fulfill some of those, or Instagram, or even Facebook, or whatever it might be. But I think it's really important to have these set goals in place and then view the platforms as how you're going to get there. So I say that one goal was, I don't know, say if you worked at a place and a goal was to hit a certain amount of clicks, right? So then if that was the case, then you might not focus on something as new and flashy as a Twitter Spaces. You might rely more on Facebook or Twitter or whatever it may be. So I think it's really important that people set goals up front of who they are and what they want to be on social. And then from there, things kind of fall into place a little more easily than trying to fit everything into a specific platform, even if it doesn't make sense. And there are so many now, and there have always been a lot, but there are so many distractions too that I think might not necessarily help people in the long run. They just happen to be flashy in the moment. And some of those things you do want to jump on because they're going to be around for a while, like TikTok. But it definitely, I think it serves people well to set goals as a digital or social team ahead of time, and then use the platforms as tools for them.
Totally. Yeah. It all makes more sense when you're not just looking at how do we use this platform, but how we use this platform in a way that's relevant to what we're trying to accomplish ultimately. And you're not just playing around with toys. They're creating thoughtful strategy, and the answers kind of reveal themselves through the platform's capabilities as well. And I feel like too, looking at The Athletic, your audience, and maybe I could be wrong too, but I look at like a Bleacher Report or ESPN, or they're trying to reach the broadest potential fan ever, even someone that has maybe not watched a single NBA game until LeBron hit the shot over Steph Curry in the playing game or something like that. Whereas The Athletic started off with, we are for the avid sports fan. We're someone who is not getting malnourished in their general sports diet, and we can go a little bit deeper. I am that sports fan, but at the same time, The Athletic also has these great off-the-cuff stories that just reveal things that have nothing to do with sports sometimes, but are off the field, with how these athletes have great stories to tell, and fun quirks in history. And a lot of that even came out during the pandemic, when there were no live sports to cover. So who ultimately is your audience, or is it anyone that could potentially be interested in great storytelling, whether they are a diehard sports fan or not?
Yeah, I think storytelling is a big part of it. The Athletic does a really good job at it, and we try to replicate some of that on social. And then I think The Athletic knows that people are willing to invest into their sports fandom. So I don't think that, like you said, I think that a lot of the people who subscribe and follow have a little bit more knowledge because they're already invested, right? So in the same way that someone invests by buying tickets to a game to show their fandom, or by doing something else, we know that people are invested in their sports fandom because they're subscribing or following. So we want to make sure that we're speaking to the right people in that way.
Totally makes sense. I mean, and heck, I remember when I did my first trial with The Athletic, I was like, all right, I got however long it was, I'm gonna read the heck out of this thing. And then the more I read, the more I just became addicted to it, and now I'm a paying customer years later. So
Yeah,
the system works.
it's really good. I mean, I was a fan of the Athletic before I joined um, as an employee, and I think that it's just been really fun to see like some behind the scenes of some of this writing, because it truly is incredible. I mean, it's incredible journalism, period, and then it's framed around sports, right? So just the amount of amazing writers that we have, and the storytelling, and the features, and now even more so like analysis on breaking news and podcasts and things like that. It's just a really incredible offering.
Yeah, yeah, and something that I feel like is maybe underappreciated with the Athletic is there really is a lot of community that takes place on the platform and on the Athletic, whether it's great conversations that happen in the comments section, and there's a lot of back and forth even with the writers in the comments section. Now you guys are doing a little bit of in-game engagement as well, and whether it's on Spaces or in the app. So like how do you look at the opportunity to foster community among subscribers on these owned platforms, on these owned real estate, versus having these conversations on social? I mean, okay, let's bring this out to Twitter, let's bring this to Reddit, or let's bring this into the Athletic. Hey, did you know the writers will respond to you in the comments? It's like, how do you balance those two opportunities to really build community?
Yeah, so I can probably speak better to more off platform or off app, because that's what I do. I think with anything, no matter what it is, whether it's like you said, social, traditional social, or Reddit or YouTube or whatever it is, it has to be a valuable experience for someone. So are we creating a good user experience for this person where we're meeting them right here, where we've chosen to be, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or YouTube? Are we creating a good experience for the person who's already there and who is our target, a sports fan or whatever it is? So I think if we're doing that, then we can view it as successful, even if it's not necessarily coming from our app or something like that.
How much can you learn a little bit, or learn from what's happening on the app in the comments, or other places where fans are engaging, and vice versa as well? How can that community team learn from the conversations happening on social, and how do you convey those conversations and what's happening on social?
Yeah, a lot. So I know when a story is getting a lot of traction with comments, and so that probably means that it is interesting to the community at large. So a lot of times I definitely notice comments and see them, and they're surfaced to me. So that's the one side of it. And then I think, the other side too is that with audience engagement on social, we can kind of see what people would be interested in too. So it's definitely, we notice the community, and I think we notice the good comments, things like that too, why people are into the story. So a lot of times people will say like, oh, it really hooked me here, or things like that. And a lot of times that can make its way into social copy too. So community is a big part of the reason why I love social and digital. So it's been fun to kind of, like you said, peruse the comments and see what people are saying.
Yeah, and then vice versa on the other side of the coin. How do you guys go about trying to convey the learnings that you have from the viewing everything happening on social, whether it's how fans are responding to content and stories that are being promoted on from the Athletics accounts, or just here's what is really resonating in the social media space right now. Let's do something around it. I mean, granted, your writers and your staff are all paying attention as well, but no one's closer to it than you guys are day to day, seeing how fans are engaging, especially with the Athletics content.
Yeah, so I think if we know something is resonating, it gives us the chance to say like, okay, how can we tell this again in a slightly different way, or how can we use this to hit an audience here? So we're definitely following along with a lot of the learnings, and sometimes we've even used like user comments or things as a tease for an article. So it's fun to see when someone can offer insight to a story, or talk about a comment, and that can kind of definitely encourage some creativity from our team too.
I love that. Yeah. And I think you hit on something too that's really, that I think the Athletic does a good job of, that I think about myself even with this podcast, and that is, how do we take something that is a great whole and get more out of it, or present it in different ways, whether it's on different platforms or different ways to digest it. There might be an amazing quote from Olivia Witherite on this that I can turn to a quote graphic, and promote it that way, or have a snippet from this podcast, or if it's a video, you have a little video snippet to share on social. So like, do you guys look, especially the stories that are really resonating and are really taking off? Is it almost like, okay, we have this great buffet here, we have this great meal here. What's the best way for us to sort of slice and dice it and make sure that we are, highlighting some of the top things and also presenting in different ways for fans to engage on with different media types and different platforms?
Yeah, so it's definitely a combination. And I think something that you said makes a lot of sense to you. There might be different parts of the article or whatever piece of content that resonates with different types of people. So if we're doing a profile on someone, I don't know, who grew up in Michigan, like we can call that out, and maybe tell our writers to hit it from that angle versus if they play in LA now, there's a different angle there that'll hit a different community. And it's fun to see like different backgrounds and things come together and how people can have a conversation about something, even though they're really interested in two different parts of it. And I think that that's one thing that we try to do is like pull out the most relevant information from these, or again, something that'll resonate with a certain group of people, and then take it from there.
Gotcha. Yeah, like I said, there really is so many different angles to approach a lot of these stories from, and they will hit different audiences differently, different communities differently, because they have different passion points that are the entry point to the athletic ultimately as well. And it's interesting to see how stories do start to then spread across the sports ecosystem, and something like, Boardman Gets Paid all of a sudden is on every sports media outlet out there. And ultimately, I think that is a good thing for the athletic, as long as, they're getting attribution and all that. Like, yeah, I originally read this in the athletic story, and hopefully it gets there. So what's it like when you see sort of a story from the athletic sort of snowball across media outlets? And did you find that does ultimately ladder back to the athletic and increases the credibility of the writers, increases traffic, not necessarily traffic to the website, but just knowledge and mentions saying, hey, I read this in the athletic, or this is from the athletics article? Or does it oftentimes there's a lot of stuff that kind of get lost in the ether if there's a big news drop from Shams or Boardman Gets Paid?
Yeah. So I think one thing that we try to do as a social team is make sure that we can drive the narrative when we can. So if we know that a Boardman Gets Paid type of thing is coming, we can be the first person to put it out with some context, right? So it's not just this, it's like, here's why he said this, or here's what it means, or whatever it is. I think a perfect example, and this is actually right when I started at The Athletic, was the sign stealing scandal happened right after I joined. And that was quite the introduction. And I think with that, like, obviously you go down the road and people aren't crediting The Athletic anymore, or doing follow-up stories on it, or that aren't referencing the original or things like that. But at the end of the day, I think that's an article and a story, the story of a lifetime that is ultimately attributed back to The Athletic. So I don't like the phrase like all publicity is good publicity. I don't really believe in that, but I do think that within the context of something like that, when it's something that everybody is talking about and that you started it, it'll kind of make its way back to you. And I think then on our social channels and things like that, it's adding context and things like that. So when people do find where the story is coming from, they have more context and more knowledge than they might from reading something that's aggregated or something.
Totally. Yeah, especially if it's like whatever, one line on a Bleacher Report graphic or whatnot, and it's like, okay, I want the full story here. And you go about going down that rabbit hole, or you see that it's from The Athletic, and you ultimately make your way back there, or have an appreciation of the brand because they're telling these greater stories. And it can certainly compile over time as well. Just a few minutes left here with Olivia Witherite, manager of social engagement for The Athletic, for each episode's shareable stat. Really enjoying just bouncing around all this great discussion about fan engagement and sports fan passion and storytelling, and just a lot of fun. So take me through a little bit. I would be remiss if I didn't pick your brain a little bit about what it's like when all the sports stopped in 2020 with the pandemic. As I alluded to a little bit earlier, I think a lot of us were blown away with the great content The Athletic did come out with during that time. Just completely cool stories, whether it was history based or crazy quirks of culture, and the stories that maybe writers haven't had time to go down and tell before. So what were some of your key learnings from the time when sports did stop, and then what it's been like picking it back up and making sure that you guys are properly ready to go?
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, just the fact when there were absolutely no sports going on was just wild. And like you said, it did make everybody creative and scrappy, and finding things to talk about was a challenge, but I definitely learned a lot from it, to kind of know what people were talking about and what they wanted to hear during a time where sports weren't really going on. And I think for me, it made me realize, like, especially around the time The Last Dance came out, because there weren't really any sports then, but it was like a sort of sports moment, of how important sports are for like a sense of community and a sense of belonging on social media or in a specific fan base or whatever it may be. I hope we don't go through a time where we don't have sports again. It was really sad and really, really boring. But I think, again, like you said, it did make me, and then all of our team really creative. And I think that I definitely learned a lot from it, as far as like listening to the pulse of what people are talking about and relying, like you said, on history and things like that. And then I think for me too is I really realized, I think on social, everyone feels like they always have to say something. And I think for me, it kind of taught me that sometimes, if you don't really have anything to say, you don't really have to say anything. There were a lot of things obviously going on during the summer that were much more important than anything that we could have talked about. So making sure that when it's necessary, we're giving other people the literal space and bandwidth on their social media to talk about what's important. So that was really, really, really vital for me to learn during this time too, is, okay, when are we going to not say anything? When are we going to say something that's meaningful? And then when are we going to say something that's meaningful, but in the context of sports, right? So it was definitely a learning experience.
Yeah, I think everyone did a lot of overnight just learning in that sense, with a lot of these things that we didn't really think were part of the job necessarily until they became an essential part of the job. And I really did appreciate. I remember listening to you on Richard Deitch's podcast, Richard Deitch, former podcast guest, who is with the Athletic, and he had you on talking about, I think it was a little bit about being a woman in sports and also being Asian American in sports, and just in general. So talk about kind of what that meant to you personally as well, and how you helped navigate internally being an advocate within the Athletic, and making sure that you guys were on top of not on top of the story, but on the right side of things.
Sure. Yeah, I think it really speaks to why people need diverse voices in their teams and on social teams. I can't speak about every experience, obviously, but like you said, having the perspective that I do is valuable, and same with other people in other teams and with other backgrounds. So I think it really speaks to the importance for diversity within workspaces. And then for me specifically, it was a weird summer. Everybody can kind of say that, but one thing that I'll take whenever, I am on to my next job or whatever life looks like, is that the Athletic really gave me a platform. I was able to write something about when Kim Ang was hired as the Marlins GM. And I think that was just really, really powerful to me and like really cathartic. And I think it gave, I was really grateful that they gave me the platform and the editors to help me write that. So there have been a lot of opportunities within the Athletic to sort of do things outside of my normal scope of work and things like that I find really meaningful, and hopefully resonated with some others as well.
Yeah, that's really, really well done. And I read that article, and it was really well written, and I enjoyed the storytelling that you had on the podcast as well. And I guess let's finish off with just kind of going full circle here. And you got to exercise some of those writing chops, and thinking back to those days when you were an aspiring journalist potentially, and as you come up in this social media game now, where 20 years ago, social media was hardly a career choice, if it was at all 20 years ago. And so looking back now, and also at what skills you have to exercise today, kind of what do you find to be important in developing a social media career? Like, there's a little bit of PR, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of content and creative, a little bit of community. So like, what skills do you find yourself exercising the most every day, and what would you say to the young aspiring person nowadays as well?
Yeah, so I actually speak to a decent amount of college classes, and I think one thing that I say that's very tangible advice is take a video class if you can. I think that social is really skewing toward video now, so it's really helpful when you know how to do something basic like shoot or edit a package or things like that. So that's one thing for me. And I think just more generally speaking, always be willing to take on projects and learn. I don't think that I would have been where I was now, and I still have a long way to go by without kind of diving into the deep end and just kind of figuring things out. So any opportunities that you have to try new things or things like that, do it. And I think this is kind of negative advice, but if you like sports, just because you like sports doesn't mean you necessarily want to work in social. I've worked not as much now, but my old job, like 80-hour work weeks pretty regularly, and nights and weekends. And I don't say that like a badge of honor. I think a lot of people in sports social and things are like kind of, like humble brag about burning out. And I don't think it's healthy, and I don't think it makes you a good employee, generally speaking. But there are going to be days, and hopefully your work minimizes them, but where you're working a ton of hours and you're not really sleeping, you're not really working out, and you're not really eating right because you're just on the go. Yeah. So I think just because people like sports, they think they want to work in sports social, or because they like have a good Instagram or TikTok or something. But and that's okay. But I mean, I think you'll figure out pretty quickly if you want to do it as a job or you want to do it as a hobby, and either one is totally fine. But it's something I've definitely learned is like, it's not for everyone, and it's definitely can be tough from week to week, but it's fun. Like the highs are really high and it's really fun.
You gotta be able to step back and I tell people, guys, step back and stop and smell the roses sometimes and be like, I'm watching the NFL draft and it's my job to do so.
Yeah, exactly. Like, pardon my French, but someone told me when I first started to really take note of your like, oh shit moments where you can take a step back and be like, this is what I'm doing right now. I can't believe it. And I think that is just so incredibly cool. So for all the negatives, there are a lot of positives too.
I love that. At the risk of not going out on that high note, I do want to kind of touch on, because you have been able to get to senior level roles in your career, both at Maston and now the Athletic is in a managerial role. Do you find that as you go up in social that you get more removed from being the person that sends all the posts or pushes posts, and is that how has that been a challenge over the time, making sure that you are thinking about, I'm not going to control everything that goes out. It's a little also about empowering others and teaching others and delegating.
Yeah, so it's definitely less day to day than I used to do, and it can be kind of challenging when you're so used to sculpting every tweet for like a brand voice and engaging with fans directly and things like that. It's really fun. But I do think that social is changing so much, whereas before almost all of the roles were execution roles, and now it's a big part of marketing strategies and brand strategies and things. So it can be tough sometimes, but it's fun to kind of grow and be in a place where, you can have people working for you who are doing those sort of things, and you can make bigger decisions and focus on bigger projects.
Totally. You get to mold some talent as well. And you've already been doing a little bit at the Athletic also. All right, Olivia, we are going to pick your brain a little bit more, but have some fun in the extra inning segment. First this episode's shareable stat. We'll be right back with that.
Really enjoyed chatting with Olivia Witherite, manager of social engagement for The Athletic. We're going to have some more fun with her coming up in our extra inning segment, so stick around for that. But first, this episode's shareable stat. This episode's shareable stat comes from a study by Hookit, which is a social media valuation platform primarily working with sports and sponsors. And it was cited in an article by Sportico. And the shareable stat is that Cristiano Ronaldo, through his Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram posts, produced over $75 million of value for sponsors, not including his sponsored posts, his endorsement deals, just from showcasing logos and brands in his everyday photos or videos, whether it's typically from games or from training. And that's $75 million. So what can you take away from that? Well, it doesn't mean you need to necessarily partner with athletes, although the company I work for does a lot of that as well with providing content to athletes. But it's also making sure that you can plan for opportunities to extract and maximize that value of posts that are including your athletes, as well as any content you're giving to athletes themselves for their massive platforms. That may mean kind of cataloging the various consistent images and content that you're providing to players or you're taking of players. And I think a lot of teams do a good job of this already. Whether it's making sure that there's branding present and visible in the area of the arena or the venue in which players arrive, so that you can be sure that if they are going to show off their fashion outfit for the game that day, that there is a sponsor that's present, and you can start to estimate the value of that and really create some huge additional value for your corporate partners. Consider other areas where a sponsor might show up regularly, whether it's for practice, around the dressing room, in the hallway, around scrums even, certainly around warm-ups and training areas, and of course everyone loves the travel pics, whether that's getting off or on a plane or a bus. So yes, you're not going to brand every single piece of content that goes out there, but when there's consistent opportunities for a brand or a sponsor to own something and you can really place a value on it, that's just one more way to add some really big tangential social media value, as we see with this episode's shareable stat. And that, once again, is that through posts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, Cristiano Ronaldo, who, yes, has the biggest social media platform of any athlete in the world, so not everyone will equal this number, of course, but through his posts, he produced over $75 million of sponsor value. And again, that comes from a study by Hookit and an article by Sportico. So that's a social shareable stat. Think about it, ponder it, have a conversation about it, but stick around for some extra innings with Olivia Witherite of The Athletic.
Right back from this episode's shareable stat, and I'm joined once again by Olivia Witherite. She is the manager of social engagement for The Athletic. Olivia, just had a fantastic conversation with you. Are you now ready to go into some extra innings?
Let's do it.
And these will be a little bit longer because we're not starting with a ghost runner on second. So these are playoff extra innings. Number one, you spent the early part of your career at Masson, which covers the Orioles and the Nationals, among other things. So tell me, what's the dynamic like between Orioles and Nationals fans?
Interesting. So obviously there's a lot more there than that, but definitely two very different fan bases. And I think it's becoming a legitimate rivalry when they play each other every year. So those were always some of my favorite series of the year.
So you, as a homegrown Orioles fan, were you happy for your neighbors when they won the series? Was it kind of weird? Was it like an empty victory?
Yeah, no, I really started to really love Nationals fans. I feel like they were kind of growing alongside alongside the team. So that was really fun to see. And I made a lot of connections with Nats fans. So yeah, I was definitely happy for them, especially in 2019. So happy to see it.
Totally. Yeah, it's different because they're the first generation of Nats fans. They weren't a team, for the last generation. Although I'm getting old too, so maybe they have been around for 30 years, but not quite.
Since then, but there were some original Expo fans. I think not a lot, but some that kind of made the switch too. So
right.
Definitely like a really growing fan base. They pack games too. I haven't been to one since the pandemic, where I know it's a little different, but they really showed up every game, so it was fun.
Hey, you gotta respect it. A city full of sports fans is not a bad thing. Number two for you, tell me. We touched on this a little bit in the interview, but tell me the skill set that helped you most early in your career, and then skill set you want to further develop now.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, being really versatile. So I wouldn't say I'm sort of a master of none, but I think that I have tried to know how to do a little bit of everything. And I think that served me really well to be in conversations with experts of said thing. So That's one thing that I'm kind of proud of, is that I've been able to do a little bit of everything. And then for me now, social has changed so much from when I started, where it was very execution based and things like that. So now I kind of have the opportunity to make a difference higher level and from a more brand and marketing perspective. So definitely want to enhance my skill set there.
Love that. All right, next up for you, Olivia. Tell me, this is going to be a really hard one to choose. You can name multiple if you need to. Tell me your favorite story that The Athletic has written or published during your time there so far.
This is hard. I don't know if I have a specific favorite. Okay, so I have described The Athletic sort of how I would watch like a Netflix or things like that. Like sometimes I get very into a specific writer or something like that, even if I don't necessarily care about the team. And then from there, it's like, okay, I read a lot about that. Now I'm going to scoot over here and try this sport or this writer. So it's really fun because there's actually something for everyone.
I like that.
like scrolling through your Netflix homepage. So for me lately, I've been very into James Edward. He's our Pistons writer, and he just writes really, really incredible features and stories. And I'm not a Pistons fan. I don't really know that much about the Pistons. I know they're pretty bad this year. They're rebuilding, but he's just really incredible. So that's a cop-out answer because I picked a writer versus a story. But that's kind of how I consume my athletic reading a lot.
No, honestly, that's probably the way I would have to answer too, because I can't think of like a single one. I would say like anything that Joe Posnanski writes, put it in front of me, I'll read it. So like, as an example there, so I can definitely relate. All right, number 5, looking at their social media use only, which athletic writers do tend to do the best job on social media and why?
Ooh, that's a good question too. So if he ever heard this, he would laugh at me because I love to make fun of him on Twitter, but Zach Harper is just hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
He is so engaged and so online and ridiculous, but he is very funny. So he is definitely one that I would pick right off the bat. I'm trying to think of others. There's so many people who are really, really good at using their social media. So I'll kind of stick to him maybe, but there are so many that are really good at doing teases and things like that, and like really talking to the fan base that they cover the team of really well.
Yeah, they do seem to appreciate their fan base and engage with them, answer questions, and let them know that they're listening. They're not just pushing posts and being blind to everything. And Zach Harper's been killing it. It's now it's his time to shine with the NBA playoffs and NBA Twitter going off. So we'll definitely encourage people to check out at Talk Hoops. I think he is right. Zach Harper on Twitter. All right, number 6 or number 5. I'm losing track here. But tell me, you get to expose to all these different sports, all these different fan bases. So if you can't think of an answer here, tell me the sport and the team with the most engaged fan base on social that just eats up everything about their sport or their team.
Okay, I got to think about this. I should have done some homework ahead of time. Okay, so I'm not saying this because I am on this podcast with you, but I think Padres Twitter is absolutely hilarious. I don't know if it's my answer, but it's just so funny. Like, it's just so funny. And they're like kind of in their own little corner, just doing their own thing. But if you like tweet something about the Padres, they will find it and they will engage with it. So I don't know if that's my specific answer of like the most engaged, but I kind of like it's a little like niche, I guess. But that's one that I like.
Is there a sport that stands out to you, like college football fans go crazy, or soccer fans are insane, or NBA fans are the craziest? Or, I mean, they all have their own passion points, of course, but is there one that just takes the cake?
I don't know if there's a specific fan base on social they're very different from sport to sport. I don't know if there's one that's necessarily the best, but I might have to say just based on everything that's been happening with the failed Super League and things like that, like soccer. So like European soccer football fans are wild. It was crazy to follow along with that and cover that on social when all of that was happening. So maybe I'll pick that.
Heck yeah. And the videos of them protesting at the stadiums, like, they are crazy on and off platform.
Crazy.
Number 7, I know you talk about the decision to get your MBA while you're working full time as well. I think did you just graduate, or are you done with your first year? Tell me about the decision to get your MBA and what's been like so far.
I am a year through, so I still have a while to go because I'm only going part time. So it's like if you did it part time, it would be about 3 years, and that's like with taking a decent amount of classes. So I'm kind of just doing it as I go. I decided to do it for kind of the reasons that I mentioned earlier, is I wanted to strengthen my marketing and my brand skills. And so this seemed like a good way. And then I decided to really do it during the pandemic when it was online and I had a more flexible schedule. So that's kind of when it went into it. People have asked me if they should go back to school, and I would give the very honest answer is like, if you don't have to, don't do it. It's really challenging working in sports on top of it. It's really busy. I hope it'll pay off at the end, but it's definitely a lot. But I've learned a lot that applies to my everyday job for sure, but it's challenging.
I mean, I asked that question partly for me because I definitely had that time during the pandemic where I was like, maybe I should do this now. And
No, I know.
you
Like,
for
maybe I should have learned how to cook or something, but here I am.
no, my hats off to you for balancing all that and continued best of luck as you go through it. All right. Speaking of cooking, now we're gonna have our food question, getting toward the end here with Olivia. Tell me if I go visit you out there, and now you're in New York, but if I go to visit the DC area, tell me what's the best meal to get out there and where do I get it?
Okay, so I lived in Baltimore for 5 years, so I'm gonna speak to that.
Let's go Baltimore.
I miss a few places. One in particular that I'll highlight is called Ekibin. It's a Asian fusion sandwich shop. Oh my gosh, it's so amazing. And I've lived in New York and I've lived in San Francisco where there's a lot of Asian food and I haven't had anything like it. So that would be my pick there. And then yeah, so like I said, I've kind of bounced around and I feel like in every city I kind of have my thing that I'm like, oh, I love this or I miss this. But in Baltimore, DC area, it's definitely Ekibin.
Nice. I like that. We'll try it out. It's something besides crab cakes out there, huh?
I know. I guess I should have picked a crab thing now that I'm thinking about it. But Maryland crabs are hard to beat too.
We got you covered. We had a Baltimore guest on the podcast not that long ago from Zach Seidel from UMBC, and he gave us the crab cake recommendation.
Okay, good.
Our next question for you. We got a couple more left. Tell me at Masson, what was it like covering Chris Davis? I mean, the player who is known for being a home run beast for a while there, and then signed a long contract with the Orioles, and just kind of struggled and struck out a lot and did not hit well. So, what was it like, kind of being there when you guys had to cover such a situation?
Yeah. So when I was at Masson, I wasn't a reporter, so I did a lot of social and marketing initiatives with players. So, working with them to come to meet and greets or to sign some gear for fans or and FanFest, whatever it may be. And Chris was one of the guys that I worked with pretty regularly. And to be honest, I have nothing but good things to say to him. He was super great to me, really helped me a lot. Obviously a bummer with everything that's happened on the field and now he's out for the whole year. Yeah. But as far as who he was and how he treated people, I have nothing but good things to say.
That's good to hear. Good to hear that even with the struggles and all that he was still was willing and happy to do things off the field. All right, last one for you. Talking about the next Orioles superstar. The Orioles are not exactly anyone's pick to win the World Series this year, but they have some talent on the field here and there that's doing pretty well. So tell me, the current Orioles player with the best chance of being a superstar in this league is who?
Okay, so if I can pick someone not on the 40-man, I would pick Adley Rutschman.
Okay.
But I don't think that was the question, so I won't say that. But I'm so excited to see him. It's the majors. It's going to be such a good day for Orioles fans. If I'm picking a current Oriole, I think I can kind of rule out Trey Mancini and John Means are good, so that doesn't count to me. So I would have to say Austin Hayes. I think that he is really talented. He's jacked. I think he is a really good defender. He can hit. So I'll choose Austin Hayes.
There we go. A name to keep an eye on. And the Orioles have some youth there, and definitely, like you said, we're all waiting for Adley Rutschman to make his debut. So exciting stuff. All right, Olivia, your chance now to take over the podcast for a moment and tell us your social media all-star to follow. Just tell us who they are, what platform they're on, and why they're following.
Okay, so I have two. I think one is more from a social perspective of someone that I like to follow just because I find a lot of inspiration, and it's the Washington Post on TikTok. I don't know if you follow them. He's so good. So good. It's so funny, so engaging, and very informative too. It's hard to balance that line of being fun while also talking about hard news. And he does a really good job of it. So that's one. And then I think from just a content or an account that I follow, Shabazz, he is the director of digital for the Timberwolves and for the Lynx. He's super, super talented, really good photographer. So I've enjoyed following him just because I'm not a photographer and I'm not a graphic designer, but I just appreciate good art and good design. And I think he does a really nice job with his photography. So that's one off.
Yeah, I like that one. Shabazz is a great guy overall. And it's been kind of cool to see his pathway kind of when he was first picking up a camera to now he's doing these crazy things with different frame rates, and it's been cool to see him learn that craft and get good at it.
Yeah, Edward's gifts are so good. They're
hell yeah. And how about you, Olivia? Where can we find you? As well as I won't make you list out every platform for the Athletic, but where do you want to send users that want to follow the Athletic?
Yeah, follow the Athletic. We focus on a lot of different platforms, but I'll just say Twitter right now. That's the one where I feel like it's sort of our bread and butter, and where a lot of sports fans are having really good conversations. So follow the Athletic on Twitter and all social media, and then I'm Olivia Witherite on all platforms: the Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, things like that. So yeah.
Check her out. Check out the Athletic, of course. And cannot thank you enough for giving us some of your time today. It's never a slow time, in the sports season, except during the pandemic when sports stopped. Luckily, they're not stopped anymore. So thanks so much for sharing your knowledge, and best of luck with the rest of all the seasons for the Athletic.
I know there's no off season now. I missed baseball off season for sure, but I appreciate you having me. This is really fun, and thanks again.
Thanks so much again to Olivia Witherite, manager of social media engagement for The Athletic. Really enjoyed picking her brain a bit, learning about The Athletic, learning about her background and how she's got to where she is today, and really appreciate her giving us some of her time because the sports season, the sports events never slow down outside of pandemic, of course. And we really appreciate Olivia giving us some of her time today. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287. Visit me on LinkedIn as well. Visit the website, dsmsports.net, for more episodes and content. And, of course, follow, subscribe, check out the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.